Uh, First and foremost, this slideshow that I'm presenting on, you can actually download, and I would encourage you to because it includes website links that might help you with your programs if you ever want to revisit any of the things I bring up. I'm also using Pull Everywhere, so that's a tool that could come in really handy in your classrooms if you ever, you'd like to do some formative assessment. Does anybody here use Pull Everywhere? Okay, great. And it's free for 30 seats, I think, as far as I remember. So this slideshow includes just the tools that I'm using and also some of the things that that I was going to bring up, some of the research and some of the links to some of the tools that you might come in handy in your programs. But for starters, and a little bit about myself, but I wanted to start with something related to a question. What kinds of questions you think would be handy for me to cover today? That'll help me figure out where to go with my presentation, because broadcasting and CTE broadcasting and careers and technology, and we heard a question earlier about the technology I'm using for the presentation today and how to connect with the students through YouTube. I mean, there's 100,000 ways you can talk about broadcasting. If you go to this link here, Pull Everywhere, and let me know what questions come up, and I'll make sure I cover them at some point during the hour we have. So are there any questions that that come to mind? Things that you'd like to cover? Anything of interest? I'm gonna go ahead and put up the poll. Yes. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the question is how we get information to the two different schools, from the two schools. Are they wired with fiber optics to that field house? But they are not. Okay. And is this information being streamed live? It will be. So so the intention is to have the whatever content these two schools are providing brought to this location 30 miles away. Did I hear you right? And the information that you're giving live is this being produced and broadcasted while it's happening, or is this something that you're wanting just the information to be able to broadcast? Okay. Okay, so if you were to do a broadcast program for that kind of information, I mean, if you were trying to stream this information live on their channel, I think the fastest, easiest way to do it would be to use the tool we're using, actually. It's called Zoom. It is paid, and the reason I would recommend a paid, normally I would say if it's just a one-off situation involving students, having a conversation with somebody, showing content, doing something free for an hour is what Zoom does provide for a free account. But for the paid account, which is the one I'm using right now, you can go live at any moment and for as long as you want, which can be really, really useful. Because then what will happen is on your other end where you have the broadcast being streamed, on that channel, you'll bring in your Zoom conference call, right? And you'll be able to showcase their conversation, and they'll talk as they normally would in a broadcast. And we can, the nice thing about Zoom is it toggles between different views. Right now we're using a view right now where you're seeing my desktop screen and the PowerPoint, but just as easily with the click of a button, co-host, which is this gentleman over here, can actually turn that off and switch to a different view where you can actually have sound sensitive screens that toggle between each other based on who's talking. In your case, I would recommend not using that feature. There's actually a third view in Zoom where you can actually have a screen capture. You can do that through OBS, which is a free software, and OBS will capture the video screen that you choose with the frame that you choose. So you can actually use a different view here where each person is shown on the Zoom conference call, and you can bring in just that picture, that part of your desktop screen, if that makes sense, with the person talking. So it's almost as if they are live in the same room with you. It's actually a really sweet part of our we've done it before in our program. Does that answer your question? Yeah, question. You can have up to, I think, 5, if I recall, on the paid version. And then, of course, the pay structure for Zoom goes up from there based on how many people are joining. But I would recommend, if you are going to do that and stream it, if you're going to stream Zoom, I would recommend keeping it down, keeping the number of people talking down to like 3. Yeah, and the reason why for that is because when you guys are using a broadcast program, you're streaming your video content, right? Video content is a lot of data going into the air, and you want a strong bandwidth to be able to make that happen. But Zoom would eat up a lot of that. if you had too many people on the same conference call. So, for example, we last year had a broadcast program, a special interview. It didn't go terribly well, but that's one of the lessons in broadcasting is you learn from your mistakes. And one of them was we used a Zoom conference call with a parent, and that conference call was pretty shoddy because of the bandwidth. It turns out the person speaking was actually moving in a car, and the bandwidth started to slow down. In your case, I don't think that would be an issue because you're all in one place. And I think that would be a great, easy way to, to do interviews. We're actually not there yet with our broadcast this year, but I'm thinking what we're going to do later this year is actually do Zoom conference calls with teachers in their rooms. And my hope is that culturally as a school, we can showcase some of the things that students are doing live in their classrooms. Like, it's a little tricky, because you are going live at the moment it's happening. And so some people were a little weird about that. And I have to admit, when I started this program 3 years ago, our broadcast program was really strictly just our classroom. And then what we started doing was introducing things. Slowly but surely, we started introducing some features, and people started to see how fun it was to show some of those events. One of those videos that we do every week is called the Week in Review. It's basically photos and videos of teachers in their classrooms. We share with them a Google Drive link. They have access to all of the content inside of it. They add whatever they want. And then we have 2 students in our broadcast program. They're not on the panel today, but they're in the program, and they're very reliable. And all they do is they bring all those photos and videos into Animoto, and they turn them into a video. And then we play that in our broadcast. So we kind of skipped through a bunch of different things all at once. And if you didn't catch some of those, we go live on YouTube every week. YouTube is free. And a reason I did this presentation 2 years ago was because I found it so exciting and all this was so accessible to us. And the only reason it wouldn't be accessible is if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of internet infrastructure. So my apology from this presentation is that I can't speak to that, except tell your local congressman to bring internet to rural communities. Because I know we're doing that in our area. We have a lot of infrastructure issues further out we go in our Peninsula School District. We have a very interesting school district because we have such a great municipality, but it's also coupled with a lot of areas that are very rural. And part of the issue we're dealing with as a growing community is that we want to bring internet to those areas. And if we do, then programs like this can come in really handy. But the good news is, for you, if you wanted to bring broadcasts to your classrooms, is that you only need 5 megabytes per second to go live anywhere in the world. 5 megabytes per second. And just to give you a sense of that, your phone averages about 100 megabytes per second on any given moment. 5 megabytes per second. I could go live on my cell phone anywhere, even in the rural areas of my community, and provide a cool video live feed of something going on in my school. And one of the reasons why I think it's so important to do that is the research shows it. I'm going to go back to this slide for a second. The research shows that we do much better as schools with our students when we have urgency involved in our programs. When we have, that is to say, an opportunity for students to do something that requires them to show it and be able to bring information quickly to other people because it has gravity to it. A case in point, my students are live right now for this Zoom conference call. They showed up way before they needed to be able to be here and be available for this conference call. And they're hearing me now, even though they can't talk to me and I can't hear them, but they know how much dedication that requires of them. And you see it in the classroom. The amount of urgency that these kids bring and the amount of skill that they bring with that urgency is unbelievable to me. And I can tell you now, I could create 100,000, I hope there are no language arts teachers in the room. I apologize for this next statement. I was a language arts teacher 3 years ago before I got this job. And one of the things I noticed immediately when I started broadcasting was that students create all sorts of things if they get to be seen. And we know that as teachers because we show those, we see it in the quality of their work. If we told somebody to write an essay on for example, a hero, and then we decided the next day to show them a hero today or bring up a hero in their life, the latter is going to be much more interesting for them, right? Because it's a direct connection with their lives. And that's precisely what broadcasting does in real time. Every single day we go and produce our content. And the students in the program, generally speaking, they're all really excited to do that. They love showing their work. They love doing the best they can. And in some cases, it doesn't always quite work out that we get the technology to behave on our behalf. But I don't want you to confuse the two things. I'm not here speaking to you because I love technology, even though I love technology and I love broadcasting. I'm here because this slide tells me it works. This slide tells me, and everything in it, all of the links to the various people who've done their work trying to identify what works for kids to bring rigor into classroom, they see it. They see their work produced so much better, so much more artistically, so much more goes into the work the students do when they know that what they're doing will be presented to other people. Another case in point, tomorrow we have a bell schedule that's totally unique to our school. And that's going to require a whole set of new announcements. We have a breaking news beat, 2 students who are just there in our newscast to find information that's up to date and bring it to our broadcast. And they work really by the minute, because sometimes what happens is a bell schedule will change. And you know this. Who here has a bell schedule that's different than the norm next week? Anybody 2 weeks out? It goes on. And some of those informations come through our broadcast, and those students bring that information to the other students in the school. So the culture shifts a little bit, and it becomes a lot more exciting for the kids because their information now suddenly is what everybody else is relying on to make something happen. And I think that's the secret. That's what makes this program fun. So I'm not speaking to you because I like technology. I'm speaking to you because we know that it's a great way for kids to become part of an urgent culture in which their information matters to other people. I presented this slide last year, and I really still like it. I'm living by it, really. Those of you who are in engineering and science know this to be true, that there's definitely a cycle when it comes to how we get information, how we produce it, and what we do with that information, and how we end up going back to that information and shifting things so that we can change and adjust, right? I wanted to bring light to this, but any of you in science and engineering know this diagram. I did not know this diagram until I started this program. I think it's essential for this type of program to work. You have to come into this program knowing that things will not work. I see some nods, because that's a universal fact, right? Nothing works all the time, 100% of the time. In fact, if I would call us anything in this program or in this room, you don't have to hear it from me. You are an expert at knowing that things won't work and how to keep your calm in the process, right? That's what this program teaches in a very, very effective way. This is what it looks like when we adjust it for broadcasting. I have to have these meetings with my editors, and the people in the room back in Gig Harbor who are listening to this are saying, Mr. B, yeah, we know you talk way too much, or we talk way too much. But I would beg to ask any of us who loves what we do, how many times we can get a student to voluntarily stick around to try to finish that extra conversation before the bell rings. You know you've grabbed them when that happens. You know you've won as a teacher because you see the enthusiasm that comes with what they're doing. When they, not you, they are the ones who want to stick around and finish the conversation. One of the students who's not in the panel today, she's Ellie, and she's our producer for Broadcast News. She's an incredible student, and all of the people in the panel you'll find are very astute in one really important capacity. They learned and they know how to talk about the issues that they're facing, and they learn really quickly how to communicate those, which is another secret in broadcasting, right? This diagram up here is an art and skill in discussing issues, learning what the problem is, figuring out how to fix it, and learning how you can adjust for the next time around. This is what it comes down to. And I wish I had learned that in my school growing up. It just wasn't something that I just understood. But when you start to do it in this broadcast program, you realize that broadcasting can go much easier when you think that way. Does it say anywhere up here that there's a stoppage in the cycle? It keeps going and going. There's always something to improve upon. I have 100 things I could say about that, but I'm gonna let the students bring that up because they're the ones who are in the front lines. They're the ones where the rubber hits the road. They know when things don't go right. And it's important that they understand and that we understand that as long as we keep going and adjusting, that's the skill I think is the secret to this program. That is the skill, right? That we actually have a chance to improve our work so that we can continue to go forward and improve it the next time around. The moment I hear somebody say, we've got it made, is when I actually told my students this one day. I said, the moment I say that to you and I don't need to learn is the day I stop teaching. It's that important to me. And I think that's a life skill. It's not just a teaching skill. And I think when I hear the kids thinking that way and talking that way with me, I get really excited because I see them being willing to adjust and improve, but to keep going and know that they can keep going, even though something might not go their way. Hope for the best, plan for the worst, right? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Keep your calm. Know that the problem can always lead to a solution, and that assume the next time is always better. I think that's just a matter of hope. There's another word for it, hope. These are ways in which broadcasting could come in handy to you. And I just put this table in here just so that you can see some examples of how it could be applied. I think I almost heard one coming out earlier when we were talking about these 3 schools trying to connect their dots. That's a great example of how broadcasting can work in your favor. Broadcasting can totally be about how schools end up connecting to each other, relating to each other. And honestly, I've never heard that question before, but that's a great example of how broadcasting could help. Because now you've got schools talking to each other, not just one school in isolation. And you can think of that, almost at the same level, excuse me, as you would if you were to think about a school just by itself, right? How many of us live in classrooms and leave our classrooms, not necessarily even connecting with somebody else in the building that day? And I'm one of them. And yet I still teach a class in a school that connects all those, It's tempting, but in broadcasting, you actually bring those together. So now the classrooms can become places where people can come and watch even though they're not there, right? That's a great resource. The only thing I would say as a caveat to that is that's the program that I came from. Excuse me. That's the infrastructure that came with the school I was with before I came to this job. And one of the reasons why I decided to start this presentation was to let you know that that is definitely a way to broadcast, but it's not the cheapest, right? Because how many times you have to come out with a technology person or an expert or somebody, a technician, electrician, to come out and fix those TVs every time there is a problem or the network connection is not correct, right? The nice thing about having a broadcast program through YouTube or Facebook or Twitter is that whole aspect of the classroom, of the network, of the infrastructure for your broadcast goes away, right? All you need is a projector, literally a projector, and a computer attached to it. And every school generally has that, huh? That's one-way communication, unless you bring in a Zoom conference call, in which case you could have a 2-way communication. Is that what you're referring to? So if you happen to have a situation where you have those TVs, the reason I advocated that we go live on YouTube was because then we skip that aspect of the closed networking situation, because those require a lot of hardware and a lot of the cost to the school. This system removes that. So now the students and the teachers can rely on just simply a good internet connection to be able to get their broadcast started and to be able to participate and be in it. Yeah. So if you download this slideshow, all of these texts are links, and they're links to resources that could help you with your broadcast. I just provided some. There are hundreds of softwares and hardwares. I'm going to go ahead and I want to make sure that we have time for the students to share their experiences. But these links can be found in the PowerPoint if you download the PowerPoint and decide to take advantage of some of those resources. These are examples of hardware. We opted last year to start going live through OBS, which is a free software. It's a switcher. So you can actually use it to connect multiple cameras to your broadcast. But you don't have to be that complicated. Remember, all this comes down to is YouTube. You could go live on your phone if you wanted to. Your phone. So one of the slides I skipped was involving how a meeting would go if we were to have a meeting with your editors. I just recorded an example of that from last year. So if you want to see that video, you're welcome to. But I don't need to waste your time with that. I think what's more important is that you get a chance to talk to the live audience back in Gig Harbor that I consider my bosses, the broadcast students in Gig Harbor. They're actually sitting in the conference room, not in our broadcast, not in our broadcast studio, but in the conference room upstairs, where they're basically listening in. Hey guys, can you hear us? Okay.
We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Go ahead and talk about your breakfast.
So this morning, I had some. Today was a bit different. I had two pieces of the new Philadelphia cheesesteak pizza from Domino's. It was actually pretty good, to be honest. I mean, like, I'm not gonna say like not to diss Pizza Hut or anything, but Domino's is lit.
All right, if you didn't hear that, the audience is totally laughing right now.
All right,
Awesome.
all right.
Right, and honestly, I can't tell you, I'm talking to the audience now, what standard that would fall under, but it's definitely positive, right? So we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. We're going to start from, we could start from there. Ben or Sean, you've got the mic pointed towards you. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure.
Or Ben,
so,
sorry, Ben has the microphone. Okay, Ben, go ahead.
My name is Ben. I am the CEO of HRTech, and I am the chief, or not the chief. Sorry. I am the broadcast engineer. I guess I'm gonna pass it on to Sean. Actually, I'll just explain my position first. I I run the visual technology for the broadcasts that we run here. Pretty simple. So yeah. Sean, here's the mic.
My name is Sean Kleiss. I am the audio engineer for our broadcasting system. I'm basically Ben's partner in crime. I run all of our audio, music, anything we need that involves sound, I'll run it.
I'm Megan. I am the multimedia unit producer. And so basically, I will communicate every project that they do in a multimedia class, and we will put them on the broadcast.
Hello, I'm Matthew Sleater, and I am a Falcon News anchor.
Hello, my name is Haley DeLine. I am the CFO of HRTech.
Hello, I'm Natalie Gwinner, and I am our chief news editor. I am in charge of making sure that everybody gets their stories in on time.
Hi, I'm Annabelle Betlin. I am technical director of Falcon News. I make sure on the days we film, I make sure everything's running correctly.
Hi, my name is Claire Lurch. I oversee a lot of what happens in the script department, and I also run the teleprompter on broadcast days, so that's moving the script. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kira Moody, and I write most of the scripts. Edit and write and stuff, and I get in stories.
All right, that was everyone. Back to you, Mr. Penwalver.
Got it. Thanks, guys. Can we give the panel a round of applause just for being here? What I wanted to put it out there is for you to to ask some questions of your own. This is a unique opportunity. Okay, so the question is, what is the workflow like from Monday through Friday, from the time that we end our previous broadcast to the time we do our next broadcast? What does that workflow look like? Anybody want to answer that question?
Hello.
I'll pass the microphone.
Yes.
Go ahead, Claire. Go ahead. Hi.
Okay, so normally, because one thing you have to realize is at least in Washington, Wednesdays are late starts, so we don't have prime time or the broadcast, so you have to factor that out. So instead of having maybe 4 days to do it and then 1 day to go live, you have 3 days to get ready and then 1 day that you need to execute the broadcast. So Mondays normally make sure everyone understands that they need to get a script in and get the main outline. Tuesday is a overall finishing it, turning it into script so that we can start getting the content flow in. Wednesdays are probably, it's a relaxation day, but it's not unproductive. Thursdays are days we'd like to either get all of the script writers and anchors together to practice the script on their own, not set up all the equipment, but still get to practice it, and finish that script and get the final edits and get the final graphics and whatever else you might need in. And then Friday we go live. We show up to school, green screens down, we kept the anchors there, we switch to weather, and then we go live. And you start the cycle all over again, and yep.
Thank you for answering that question, Claire. Wonderful answer. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I don't know if that would be a question that the panel can answer. But the question, for those of you who are listening, the question is, did all of you get preparation in technology before you became a part of primetime broadcasting? And or did you, how did we select students for this class if there was a pre-selection process? I see some, I see some heads nodding. Just remember, guys, our superintendent is listening to this call. I'm joking. I mean, he is, but
So none of us, well, not many of us really had any formal knowledge that much in broadcasting equipment. When we got in, we just started learning right away, really. And the selection process is probably, well, how it works is you choose which prime time you want to join, and then you have a chance, you choose prime time, and then you have a chance of possibly being put in that one, or if you need help, you're put into a prime time that can help you with that, and that's how the selection process usually works.
And I want to add on to that. So the prime time is a class. It's not officially a part of our day. It's 30 minutes, and some of you have this kind of class. It's like a leadership class, in a sense. So it's 30 minutes before your regular classes start. So, or 40 minutes. So we don't have quite the hour that we think we will have to go live. So that is also working to our disadvantage as a course. It's not officially a course. It's a homeroom would be a great word for it. It's like a homeroom. And in our school, that's the culture that we started with. If we were to adjust this, we might make try to finagle some rules around who can be a part of it. Maybe somebody with some previous experience. In terms of our CTE budget, we don't get affected by the members of this program because the members aren't officially part of the school, right? It's an extra class. There is a video class as well. So if students are lucky enough to have been in this particular course or in that course where it's called multimedia, they would have some previous experience that I could teach them or bring them with. Yeah. In fact, it's kind of neat to have Megan in the room because Megan Stout. Megan, can you raise your hand? Megan, we called her the unit producer for multimedia, and she was there as a representative of Falcon News and also the producer of news in that unit to help guide students if they wanted some broadcast information brought to the news. Yeah, question. The students you have from year to year, do you have regular turnover? Do you have some students that stay with you for their entire course at the school, or is there a regular turnover? We have not as much turnover as I've seen in other schools, which is helpful, I have to be honest. It's nice to be able to have, and we know that through data too, right? It's nice to have students who are in one place. But that being said, it's nice to have student leadership in the room because when they're there, they can also provide those students who are new with the information they need. And everybody in this room is picked because they show that leadership. Megan, did you want to answer or piggyback off of what I said earlier about broadcast and multimedia, what it was like to produce?
What was the question again? Could you repeat it, please?
Sure. The question was what it's like to be a producer in multimedia, as your experience was last trimester.
Okay, so basically when we made projects in multimedia, so for example, we made these videos of each class saying like what it was and like basically boosted it so like the students would be more like excited for it. So basically what they would do, they would get into like little groups and they would film a video and then they would turn it in. And since I was division manager, I was going through it and I was also unit producer. And then I would take it to Falcon News and I would go over all of them with Ellie. And each week on Falcon News, we chose one for a sponsor and played it in a broadcast so that all the students at schools could see it.
Thank you. That was a great answer. We have some more hands up. Go ahead. Oh, that's a great question for the panel. Panel, the question is, did your roles change or did they stay the same as the trimester continued or as the year progresses? Do any of you see any changes over?
So usually they do not change. You take your job and you kind of keep it for the year, but occasionally people leave or step down from positions. I've done that before. And in those cases, we do change, but for the most part, we try to keep our positions for most of the year and learn them well.
Did you, the follow-up question was, did you apply for those positions?
Yes, you technically did, but some of them not so much, but others then yes, you did apply for positions.
So this is the part where I tell you that while you'd love to create that career environment, you know that some things are out of your control. So having that career experience is good. The atmosphere is important. We have infrastructure, and if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can show you that form that gives them a chance to apply for their position. Right now, it's called hiring season. And right now the divisions have shifted because now we have a new trimester. So the students are actually being hired by Ben over there. Ben, you want to wave your hand? CEO, and by Haley, the CFO of HRTech, which is our CT program in the school. And they will pull those students in who want to be division managers, we call them. And those division managers get interviewed. Yeah. Theoretically.
If I may, could I add on to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, so one part of it, it's just, it's not just 8th graders in this room, there are 8th graders and 7th graders, so it's run by 2 different grades. And what helped last year, me, Annabelle, none of the people in this room had the same jobs that we did last year because they were run by the other 8th graders. And it's this nice trade-off where in 7th grade, you get to learn the positions and you get to get comfortable in being in the broadcast and like seeing what's happening. And then in 8th grade, you can come back and start taking the positions of the 8th graders who left. So last year I was just, I believe I just edited some of the script. I just was part of the process of editing. But then this year I came back and now I'm kind of running the department, which means it's just this nice way to go from, this is how we are able to like keep going and having people still be able to run the broadcast. It's because 7th graders are learning from the 8th graders. So when the 8th graders are gone, then the new 8th graders can do it. So it's an easier trade-off than having to get an entirely new group of just 7th graders and an entirely new group of just 8th graders every year. So
thank you. That's a wonderful follow-up, Claire. Thank you for the background too. We see some hands up. I didn't hear from you. I'm sorry. I'm going to come back to you. Okay. And I see a hand up there. So and there are 1, 2, and then 3. Okay. Go ahead. Good. That's a great question. Can somebody answer the question? We have a live show. How long is it? And is there a delay in the live versus the streamed video?
Generally our broadcasts are from around 3 to 6 minutes long in length. And most broadcasts end up having probably around a minute, 30 seconds to a minute of a delay from when things are actually being said in the studio to when they're displayed up on the big screen. So if that answers your question then.
I'm going to adjust that number a little bit because we actually have seen, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, panel, but we've actually had about 5 minutes in some cases, haven't we? 5 or sometimes 10 minutes. It kind of varies, but we try to stick to a 5-minute rule. And the broadcast schedule tool that's in the PowerPoint I showed you earlier, that has that tool there with an automatic tabulating, so you can do some adjusting, and you can sort of identify where your schedule is going to be when they're broadcast. Yeah. Yes. During prime time, yeah. The question is everybody live? Is everybody watching this as it's live on YouTube? Somebody want to answer that question?
Yeah. So it always depends. Some classes, they'd sometimes do other stuff, like their work in their other classes in that other prime time. But usually the other prime time would cut to YouTube and go watch the video, and usually it would go until the end of class because we'd have to set up for the start of class, and then 5 to 10 minutes to broadcast, and then we move on to our first period.
And that's a great, and thank you, Matthew, for saying that too. The broadcast does get recorded automatically by YouTube. So when you go live, and this is kind of the nice thing about YouTube, you can go live on YouTube. Once the YouTube ends, once the stream ends, it automatically starts to format your video and turn it into a video on your playlists for YouTube. So what we do on our channel is we actually have a playlist of live YouTube streams, right? And so teachers who miss it can always go back to it and see it later. And that's probably the number one question I get from teachers, right? I mean, I've got some stuff I need to do. Do I have to stop everything and watch this video? And the answer is no. You can watch it whenever you'd like to. They can encourage their students to watch it later on, but it's there for them in the future. Is that everything for your question? Yeah, go ahead. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Yeah. Have we? You guys would have a better memory than me. Do you remember any 6th graders in our prime time? I think we had one last year.
This year, no, we do not have any 6th graders. As I know, all 6th graders are in classes with other teachers, and they're working on vocab and reading and math.
Follow-up question. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question for actually, it's really, I can answer that question. The panel won't really know this background. The vertical, there is no vertical alignment. The closest we get vertical alignment for this broadcast program is to a radio station at Peninsula High School, which is the high school that we feed into. So and those don't really equate. I mean, there is some comparison in the sense that they have a broadcast schedule, and the beats are similar, but the technology is totally different. That's a great question too. It actually is very easy to do everything else that you just mentioned when you have a broadcast infrastructure already in place. So now that we have our technology, we have our primetime class, that class can actually also align its schedules, and they can be there to help broadcast assemblies. Now, in our case, our technology is under construction, so to speak. Our Wirecast station, our computer that we use for broadcasting, broke down. And Ben can talk to you more about that. He's actually, we call him the head of the Geek Squad, which is a group of students that decided that they were going to create and design that computer from scratch. And we just got it approved like last week. They created a report, and they brought that equipment to the district to pay for. So that would allow you to bring your stuff upstairs. For us, that's just the security, right? Because when we have our own station, we have our own equipment, we know it's going to work. We know how it works. It behaves in the way we expect it to. For people in any situation who would like a broadcast, you could use your phone. In fact, the first assembly I did with our broadcast program, I just took my phone out of my pocket and I put it on a tripod and I pointed it towards the stage, right? And I just streamed it live to YouTube from my phone. Easy to do. No, actually did not need any network to even do it. I just used my cell phone network. I saw a hand up. So the question is what multimedia is like, or what technology is like at the high school level versus the middle school level?
We can't answer that question. We don't know what it's like in
Fresh,
high
right?
school levels.
Yeah, that's tricky, right? Because then you have to sort of fill them in with all of the technology and equipment. Are they semester classes, if I might ask? Full year? Great. Great. No, that's great, because the technology learning that is involved here is actually quite fast. And if I could speak to this generation, the people in this room, you guys who are in the panel, can you give me a thumb up or thumb down or in the middle based on how you feel with technology these days? How do you feel? And that, my friends, is about where our generation is that we teach to. And I think they're being modest. Ben's the head of the Geek Squad, so yeah, he's in the middle. Of course he is. You guys are, they could probably learn it faster than you would, and probably already know it. So in this case, as my district administrator, Miss O'Neill, who's in the front row here, would say, just don't get in their way, right? Give them a reason and a purpose, and build the framework, and they will run like there's no tomorrow. Do you guys have any last words of advice for the teachers in the room? We're at the end of our session here.
I've got one thing to say. If you're planning on running a broadcast with dedicated hardware, I would not recommend using a pre-built system, because that's what we did in our first few years running a broadcast, and it clearly had its faults. I'm not sure if I should elaborate or pass it on.
Oh no, you're fine. You can. We can talk more about that later. What was that? Yeah, So yeah, we call them Brandon, say that word again.
Pre-built or pre-constructed systems.
Pre-built. Yeah, and they're all very proprietary types of designs. And the reason why those are a problem, if you are comfortable with talking about this subject, I was a little intimidated when I first started this job. And my first go-to answer was, let's do a search. Let's ask some people and find out what is already pre-built so that I don't have to do that work for me. Now, that could be a survival tactic, right? Because somebody else is doing the work for you of deciding what goes into a construction. Now that I have some experience under my belt, I was less intimidated when we had this discussion, but frankly, we had to have it because our hardware broke. It was just simply not up to, in what we'd call like up to date with the technology of our needs, streaming needs. We have a game design team for TSA. We have a broadcast station. We have multimedia video production. They all require a solid piece of work, piece of equipment to be able to make that work. And that piece of equipment I bought it 3 years ago, was not the best choice. But that being said, I think you do what you can to make it work for your needs. And without much preparation, sometimes that can work. I have to be honest, we're doing a lot more with our equipment than what that pre-designed equipment was designed for. It was really only designed for a broadcast program. But now we have so many things involved, and I don't want to say no to the students who say they want to create a game, right? So they took it upon themselves to build something and design something. There's actually a website that I'd highly recommend. Ben, you want to tell us the website for buying equipment for computers?
Well, there's actually quite a few. You guys probably all know Amazon. That's they sell a lot of computer components, and they almost all the time have all the time have deals. You can also get computer components from like Best Buy, Newegg. They all have great.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. What I'm asking about is there a website that helps you decide on the equipment to build your computer?
Yes, for deciding, there's quite a few actually. Once again, one of the ones, the program that we used, or the website that we used to design our computer system that we're now ordering, is pcpartpicker.com. And it allows you to design computer systems, and it'll give you like heads up, like, oh, these two components aren't compatible with each other, or whatever, depending on, and it'll gives you warnings and gives you accurate price results from different retailers.
Very effective tool for building a computer. And I would say that website coupled with all the websites that Ben also brought up, would be great if you wanted to build your own. Yeah. Thanks, you guys. Are there any other questions before we end the session? Can I, if I may, just give the panel a round of applause for their time. These students you're seeing here are sticking around even though the buses left about 15 minutes ago. The students that you saw leave earlier had other engagements, including, I think we have one who was in ballet doing the Nutcracker. So, busy lives. But thanks, you guys. Thanks so much for your time. I'm very excited to see you guys back in on Monday. I'm going to be back Monday. You're going to school tomorrow. Yeah, sorry. We haven't gotten there with your vacation leave
Do we
yet.
have to?
Coming soon. Thanks for your time.